Welcome, one and all. Lockdown hobby time is on us again, and my paints haven't arrived. So, we're going to be working on some Nightstalkers instead, because I would like to be finishing off the paintwork on these Abyssal Dwarf grotesques, but unfortunately the paints I need aren't here yet, so they'll probably get here on Monday now. Most likely not on a Sunday, that would be crazy. So, we're going to be working on some Nightstalkers, and you may remember this guy, who's not quite finished yet, but you'll remember the build of him, at least, and how I described the process of putting him together with a giant's head and a set of legs from a Hellboy frog monster. And I have now put together his twin. Slightly different hairstyle, and there's a bit more work to do, but the same basic idea. Got my hands on another frog monster set of legs and attached the giant head up there. And there's the top half of the monster, so I can use that for something else. Climbing out of something, sticking out of something, you get the idea. So let's put this guy to one side, because what we're going to do right now is smooth off the edges of this converted area here. Because at the moment it's looking a little bit rough, and that's not what we want. We don't want it to be sticking out, we don't want it to be rough like this, we want it to be nice and smooth, and then we want the texture in there to be, if anything, like the skin here, which is kind of lumpy and bumpy, but not jagged like this. So we're going to get some files out and have a go at that in a moment, because I think two of these on the table are going to look quite funny next to each other. Two Dread Fiends. So, which file should we try? In the file section here, let's go for this one. Graham's in the chat. So, anyone who is watching, don't forget to comment along, and I'll refer to the chat regularly. So, we're just going to do a bit of filing down here. Just trying to smooth the whole thing out so it looks like it's supposed to be one solid piece rather than just a head stuck on the legs rather crudely. We'll see how successful this is, though. May end up having to clip some of it off. So to attach this, it's super glued, and then I've put a bit of green stuff around the edge to fill in any hideous gaps that were there. And now I'm just going to file it down and try and somehow blend it together so it looks kind of smooth, the attachment. What's everyone been up to today then? This might be the latest hobby time I've done yet. That's because I wanted to give the postman every possible chance to deliver my paints today before I started. But once it became apparent that that wasn't going to happen, I had to push forward regardless, because I'm trying to do one of these videos every day, even if the paints aren't here. And I thought this would be a fun thing to work on. So we may have to snip a little bit off at the back here, because we can't have it sticking out that far. So we want to kind of blend it down there nicely, so any big lumps can come off. And we can recreate texture on top of them at the end, if need be. But for the time being, we're just scraping away. Filing that plastic down. Very exciting entertainment here. Obviously, you don't want to damage the surrounding detail too much. Stu Rat is yet to see all 10 fingers at the same time. Apparently. So the chopping in half of this miniature here, the last one I did, it ended up with a grievous finger injury for me, because the model slipped out of the vise while it was being sawn in half. But this time, I adjusted my technique, made sure the vise was nice and tight, so there was no slippage and no slicing or dicing of the flesh. Got Brad in the chat as well. Good evening. Just filing down some of this Dread Fiend that I've made. Now this area here is going to be quite smooth when we're finished compared to the surrounding area, so we can easily fix that though. We can either just put little green stuff bumps on it to kind of mimic this area around here, or we could even take a kind of press mold of some of the texture on the legs or the buttocks and then apply a thin layer of green stuff there after it had been pressed into the mold. So that's a couple of different things we can do. Just evening it out first of all with this filing. Smoothing between the two pieces. I'm not going to say it looked natural when I finished, because the whole idea is that it looks like some kind of unnatural, hideous creature, but hopefully it'll look as though it really is one hideous creature rather than two bits stuck together. This guy is a bit less forgiving than this one, because this one has more hair, so it kind of hides the joint between the head and the body and the legs and such, whereas this guy, he's got his hair kind of at the back, bunched up there. So it's going to be a bit more difficult to hide any join issues. Brad says you have tiny arms for that. I do have some arms I could put on it, but I'm not sure whether I want to. I think just the head might be funnier. Of course, I could put tiny arms sticking out the side of the neck. I could put anything on there, really. I could put wings on it. Don't think you can get dread fiends that fly. But really, there is no limit to what you can do with Nightstalkers. You can just build whatever crazy nonsense you want. It's like if you were building a Warhammer Nurgle army. You just basically get to go nuts. Brad says, what do you think of the Sons of Beermat preview? Now, I'm going to assume that it's pronounced Beermat, as in, like a coaster, a Beermat. I thought they looked very cool, those three huge giants that GW just showed off. I think they're very nice indeed. They look almost as tall as the Mantic Giant, based on the silhouettes we've seen. And obviously it's Games Workshop, so they've got some ridiculously good detail on them, but they don't seem too outrageously over-designed compared to some of the other recent stuff. They look like they'd fit in quite nicely in the old world. Stuart says, Midwinter Minis had a technique where you spread PVA over an area, and then while still wet, spread super glue over the PVA, sculpt with toothpick to get weird surfaces. Well, that's certainly not anything I've ever heard of, but I would look into that. I don't think it's something you could just dive straight into without seeing someone else do it first. It sounds a little bit crazy to me. Once this guy is filed down, I'm going to probably build some scarecrows. You can see the sprue there. I've got 3 sprues of them that I can work on, so I should be able to squeeze at least an hour out of this episode, hopefully. When my paints arrive, we're going to be doing longer episodes again because I want to get those grotesques finished. Brad says, what time to be a giant lover? It certainly is a good time to be a giant lover. Lots of giants available from different companies. And it's like a pick and mix. You can just grab whichever ones you want. Everyone loves giants, though. Is there anyone out there that doesn't love giants? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, so it's looking much smoother than when we started. Much more seamless. What's everyone's favourite giant of all time? I think most people's tends to be the Marauder giant, the classic one for the orcs and goblins, back from the early 90s. Okay, so it's looking pretty good so far. I'll probably have to use a bit more green stuff on here. So you got to be careful whenever you're filing down that you don't remove any detail that you want to remain. The little bit under the ponytail that I can't really reach very well with the file. Let's see if we can get a knife under there just to slice some of that excess away. I may have to get in there with some more green stuff in a minute because there is still a teensy bit of a gap at the back of his head. Dwarvenartness says, assuming the paints did not arrive, they did not. So, just working on Nightstalkers for now. What I might do tomorrow, because all the green stuff on my Hellfane should have dried by then, because I did a bit more on it earlier today, then I might prime the Hellfane tomorrow and then I could start painting that as well, instead of waiting for the correct paints to continue with the grotesques. I think people would enjoy that. I'll show you where I've got to with the Hellfane in a moment. So just taking off this bit of a lump that was there, because now that the rest of the body isn't there, it just looks kind of weird. out of nowhere with not being attached to anything. Okay, so we're looking pretty smooth. Let's see, what's the closest range we can get for the focus there? Yeah, it focused a bit then, and then it gave up again. But I think you get the general idea with this. And when they're done, they're going to be the Dreadfiend twins. They'll stand roughly the same height. I think this one might be marginally taller. Only a teensy bit though. Okay, anything else to do on him right now? Might get the green stuff out just to finish the job on him. Well, Mr. Stew Rat, I will go and have a look at that video at some point. Sounds very educational. Just snipping off a bit of green stuff here. So, for anyone that was paying attention and is interested in the concept of an Andy mystery box, I was going through all the miniatures that I want to get rid of, but can't be bothered listing on eBay because it would take a long time to list them all individually. Some of them probably wouldn't sell for what I want, and during a pandemic, I don't want to be going to the post office every 2 or 3 days. So it's best to just put them all together in a big lot. And the idea of the mystery box is, of course, that it's like Christmas morning when you just get all this mysterious stuff. And I've grouped it into one fantasy box and two sci-fi boxes. One of the sci-fi boxes is vaguely evil and the other one is vaguely good. And there's lots of Mantic stuff in those two, obviously, because I've got a lot of Dead Zone and Dreadball related products. The fantasy box is a bit more varied. There's still a reasonable amount of Mantic stuff in there, but there's some other things as well. And I just need to pick a price for them at the moment, based on how much stuff is in there. Obviously, I'm not going to try and get anywhere near the value of the miniatures out of it, because that would be crazy. Because if I just added up the retail price of everything in each box, then I would have to be charging way, way too much. So it's mostly for the fun of it and to get rid of a load of stuff in one go in a nice hassle-free experience. So if anyone is interested, I've got some interest already in the fantasy box. So if anyone has a definite interest in potentially the good or evil sci-fi box, then let me know. And I'll put your name down. Obviously I haven't worked out a price yet, but I just want to gauge interest for now. And I wouldn't expect people to actually make offers for it because you don't know how much stuff is in there. That's kind of the point of a mystery box. So I just need to work out what I think would be fair. So we're going to smooth down some of the green stuff that I'm just applying to this guy now to fill in the gaps around the neck. And there's a little gap at the back as well. So yeah, if anyone does have an interest in one of those mystery boxes, let me know. A good way to get a lot more money's worth of miniatures than you're actually paying for it. And then you just hope that some of it is cool stuff that you can actually use. Well, you'd be able to use all of it, but that you would want to use because it's suitable for one of your active projects. and most of the stuff is new on sprue or new in bag. And there's also some assembled miniatures, some partly painted miniatures in there, but not many of those. Just mostly not even primed. And I can guarantee no dragon heads as well, if that was a concern for anyone. Almost finished green stuffing this guy up. Still got some green stuff left though. So what do we want to do with that? Okay, looking good. Looks quite smooth all the way around now. Might do a bit more filing or knifing it down later when all this green stuff is set. You can just go to one side. And then, is there anything I can do with this green stuff now? Is there anything maybe on the Hellfane that needs a bit more? Because you'll see that I've totally green stuff up the gap at the top of his head. And from the side, you can see I've filled it in inside there as well. And in there. We've got Steve in the chat as well now. Good evening. Haven't missed much, just been looking at some Nightstalker conversion that I've been doing, which is this guy, the twin of the other Dread Fiend with the different giant head, with the frog monster legs. And just been green stuffing in some crevices after filing down to make it quite smooth all the way around the neck, I think. And now I'm deciding what to do with this leftover green stuff. Just looking on the Hellfane, see if there's anywhere to stick it that could be useful. There's got to be another crevice in here that needs filling somewhere. Ooh, yes, there's one. There's a bit of a crevice. If I point with the knife in here, let's see, let's get it closer. Down there. So I'm going to fill that crevice in right now. And I've also been discussing the Andy mystery boxes. 1 fantasy and 2 sci-fi. 1 sci-fi vaguely good, 1 sci-fi vaguely evil. And that I haven't figured out a good price point for them yet. There's quite a lot of stuff in there. But with a mystery box, you don't want to be charging people a lot of money. Because chances are they're not going to like most of it, or some of it at least. I've always found with a mystery box that there's usually 1 or 2 things in there that are really useful to me. About half of what's left is useful for other people that I know, so I can either sell it or give it away. And then the other half are things that I would just have no use for at all. But maybe somebody would out there. Sturat says maybe file down the ponytail to a proper man bun. I don't know about that. I think that ponytail looks pretty sweet as it is. Filling in the crevices. Okay, those crevices are filled. What's everyone been working on today? Sturat, just trying to enhance the revulsion. Well, I'm not sure if it needs any enhancing. I think it might already be sufficient. Anywhere else I want to blob a bit of green stuff? Anything else that needs filling? Maybe a little bit on one of these leg joints here. This is really just finding a use for the green stuff though, because there's some left over. I don't think any of this is essential work. Okay, that'll do there. Does everyone have exciting plans this weekend? Or does everyone have the same plans that they had during the week? Because that's what often happens during these times of not going out much, where most people aren't going out to work. The days kind of blur together into one big heap. Don't see any more obvious crevices that need to be filled on this guy. So let's put him down again. Quite likely that'll prime the health vein tomorrow and start painting it now that all the green stuff has been applied. Because that'll give me something to paint since my paints I was waiting for the grotesques still aren't here. So we're still sitting waiting for that. So I think we can put the other half of this frog monster away now that he's been sliced in half rather crudely there. It's difficult to saw this guy in half at the point I was doing it. He's quite a thick, chunky piece of plastic anyway, but in addition to that, his arms and his tongue are kind of hanging down a bit. So if you want to cut that high up on the body, you have to do it from multiple angles. And it was a little bit tricky. But we got there in the end, and here's what he looks like. Very nice indeed. So what I might do while I've got this green stuff here is make some little bits of texture to go on the body here. So how can we do that? Well, let's tear off some tiny little balls and stick them on the smooth areas, and then take the little sculpting tool and shape them a bit. So hopefully we can disguise where I had to cut some of the model away. How effective that is remains to be seen. Steve is just about to paint some tartan on a Burrows and Badger's West Highland Terrier. That sounds difficult. If you can't see what I'm doing because it's so small, I'll get a close-up in a second. Just trying to create some kind of texture in the areas that I've flattened, and let's make it focus on that. There you go, you can see I've put some little green stuff balls on there. They do not appear that large in real life. Stu has done tartan in 15mm, but they just go for a general impression, not expected to withstand inspection. Yeah, at small scale miniatures, you can get away with quite a lot. Your opponent generally isn't going to be armed with a microscope during gameplay. Okay, 3 little bumps on that side. And we could do with a couple on the other side as well, where I also smoothed out an area. And a bit more. Bit of a bigger lump here. Just trying to vaguely mimic the appearance of the rest of the skin texture. Okay, that's definitely going to help matters. Let's add a little bit more around the front as well. Just going under the chin area here, below the neckline, slightly. Let's just keep adding them while we've got this green stuff left here. So I've sold some miniatures today. If you've seen my Undead Rordian army, the skeleton halflings, then you'll be familiar with the range Majestic Feet miniatures. I also had the start of an orc army in that range, but I realised I was never going to get round to painting them, and not that many of them exist in the world. So the fact that I'm just holding on to them for a rainy day, and now a rainy day has come, and I still don't feel like doing anything with them. So I thought, you know what, I should just sell them, put them out there into the world, so somebody can enjoy them, get something out of them, and the world can experience seeing them on the battlefield. So it only took about 2 minutes for me to get an offer on them, and I have accepted it. So there's quite a few infantry and cavalry in there, and it'll be the good basis for any undead army. I imagine Majestic Feet miniatures don't get that many sales, because the only kind of storefront he's got is the Facebook page, and you have to kind of message to actually buy anything. You can't just go to a website and order them the conventional way. You released them on Kickstarter initially, and now you can arrange all sales via private message, I think. So that money raised from those is going into the hobby fund. Until I spot something that I want or need in the world of wargaming. Just a couple more of these little blobs on him, I think. Now, the other guy didn't really need any of this, because you can see his hair is covering up almost the entire joint. Whereas this guy, not so much. Steve says that's a bit of a shame, really, as his stuff does look pretty cool. Yeah, he does still sell it, but he only makes such a small amount. So it hasn't really been worth it for him to set up a website or anything. He's only selling very, very few. And really, the reason he had them commissioned in the first place and ran the Kickstarter was so that he could have some of them himself, really. And then other people buying them is just kind of a bonus for him. So anyone who gets any of that stuff in their army, it's going to be a unique talking point because they're so rarely found out there in the wild. Stu says he could have worn a belt to cover the joint. He could have worn a belt, but I don't know how Nightstalkerish that would have looked. Would Nightstalkers ever wear a belt? I'm not convinced. Just a couple more of these, I think. Oh, one's just fallen off. Where's it gone? It's a tiny piece of green stuff on a desk that's speckled with paint. So that's not going to be the easiest thing to find. It could have fallen into the keyboard. That's where most things end up around here. What else would you hang decapitated heads off? Or maybe a spiky belt? Maybe. I don't know if Nightstalkers are that big on that kind of thing, although some of the scarecrows do wear hats. So maybe I'm being a bit harsh on the Nightstalkers and their perceived lack of fondness for clothing. Maybe I'm judging them a bit. Okay, still got more green stuff left. So might as well just do one more. And where do we want this one? There we go. Except I've just taken it off. There it is. Fell onto the desk. Trying to work it into a little ball, but it's just squishing. Mr. Trainer had giant's head on that body. Nice. Is that the Nightstalker body? The body is from a frog monster from Hellboy. And if you've not seen his twin before, I'll show you that in a minute. I've seen people just use the frog monster as it is for Nightstalkers, because it does look like a kind of weird, nightmarish creature. This little bit of green stuff isn't cooperating at all here. Steve says maybe put a hat on the giant's head. I don't know about that. I don't know if he wants a hat. Okay, this little blob of green stuff really does not want to stay. So I'm tempted, if I haven't just lost it in the keyboard again, to ditch that one. So these ones are all stuck down nicely. So give you a bit of a close-up. Let's get it to focus on the blobs, shall we? Is it going to do it? It should do. There you go. Just put little bits of texture around the join area. Stu says, what if it was a little hat from one of the scarecrows? Do you think I should put a little hat on top of his head? Let's see. I'm going to take one of these little hats off the sprue right now. So, this is the hat that's little on the scarecrows. I could cut these bits off underneath and then stick it on his head like so. Should I do it? Let's get a vote. Does he have this little hat on his head or not? Vote now. I'm going to wait for the votes to roll in, and I think there's only about 5 people watching right now. So your vote will be critical. Does the giant want a tiny hat on his head? Got 2 votes for hat so far. Steve says do it. Okay, but another question. Does his twin need a hat as well? Do they both get a hat or just one of them? Something else for you to vote on. So do they both get a hat or just this guy? And the other question to be raised is, does the hat go central or does he wear it off to one side in a kind of trendy manner? Or does it go right in the middle? Those are the two important things we need to finalise before the hat goes on. I know it's a really tough decision. So everyone thinks the hat should go on. So I think we'll definitely do that. Stu thinks just one hat is enough, and that both of them shouldn't have one. Yeah, so everyone's voting for one hat. So we just need to see if we're going to have it central or off to the side. So we're going to cut these kind of scarecrowy sideburns off it with the clippers. So we can attach that easily to the top of his head. I'll just trim off any annoying little bits from the edge of the hat. And then we can look into sticking it on his head. And I've got a bit of green stuff left as well, which could be helpful. So let's put the green stuff underneath, and then I'll put it in a particular spot and see if it looks good there. So let's have a look. So that would be right in the middle. I'm not sure the green stuff's going to be necessary there. So if we put it right in the middle, it would look like that. If we have it off to the side a bit, maybe like that. On his chin, no, that's just going to look silly. Maybe a little bit to the side, like that. What's going to look the most stylish, folks? Like that. This is a very important step. So one vote to the side, the model's right side, one saying on the top. The model's right side would be kind of like that. And right on the top point of the head, would be like so. With the curve of the peak pointed to the rear. I think that's pretty much how it is there now. So like that. Graham says jaunty angle as well. Stu says looks too French to one side. The design of the hat, does it end up looking more just like a big nipple? I don't think there's any other style of hat on here. They're all pretty much the same kind of thing. Steve says that's perfect. Does anyone else think that's perfect? Or have we got any other suggestions? Let's get him with a bit of a background here so you can have a nice proper look. Another question, does the hat kind of need to be flattened out at the edges? Or does it just look good like that? Before I commit to sticking this down, anything else? So there he is next to his twin. Maybe do them separately and just use post attack when you want to have it on, like when it's raining. Do I want just a separate hat? I can put it on separately. Interesting. Not sure about that. I've only got the one hat that would be of any use, really. I don't think many other miniatures come with hats. Unless I got like a top hat from an action figure. But I don't have any of those to hand. So is anyone not happy with the hat? I'm tempted by this idea of painting it up separately and then just sticking it down. Because then I've got the option of finding other hats in the future that I could use as well. I could turn up to a tournament with different hats each time. So I'm very tempted to go with that approach. So I'll keep this hat to one side and I'll get that painted up. And that'll be our first hat option. And then if I want to get more hats in the future, obviously I'm free to. I think it looks cool, but is the novelty factor going to wear off? And I think I would be better off leaving it off and just switching out the hats in the future. So that's what I'm going to do. And leave the hat separate. Leave him for all the green stuff to set. And that's that. So let's stick a couple of these scarecrows together. Because why not? So there's a body. Looks like you get 5 per sprue, which means I've got 15 of them, which is enough to make a regiment. Legs. Now, there's lots of different heads to choose from. Let's go for the pumpkin head, though, because that's obviously the most exciting one. And we've got a left arm. We need a right arm as well. So what would a right arm have? What about the scythe? Scythe and a pumpkin head. You can't argue with that, can you? So there's the first guy. Yes, Steve, I can have a little box of hats and choose which one he'll wear each game. And if people ever wanted to donate hats as well, that would be a nifty little thing. So just going to clean up these pieces now before we stick this bad boy together. Now I haven't used the plastic glue for a couple of weeks, as far as I remember. So we'll see if it's clogged up or not. That's going to be an exciting moment. Because the needle does often clog and then I have to go and clean it out with fire. If you haven't seen my video on how to unblock a glue needle, then you should go and watch it at some point. It does still reel in the views, that video. So there's the scythe ready. Mould lines aren't too bad on these, which is nice. They seem to be a bit less prominent than the mould lines on the old undead they have. So I remember I spent an entire summer cleaning and assembling Mantic infantry. I was doing it quite slowly because I was watching football at the time on TV. I think it was during... what tournament would it have been? Probably one of the European Championships. Euro 2012, most likely. And I did have a lot more of those as well. Skeletons and zombies, I must have painted at least 1 zillion of them. At least. Stu says there's a top hat in Monopoly sets, aren't there? There probably is. It would probably be a decent size for a funny little top hat, but I don't think I have a Monopoly set. It is a pretty awful game. It's fun if you're playing it against someone that you really don't like, because you can kind of work against them and deprive them of the areas that they want. And just let other people win, but not the person you hate. I'll have to put the word out to people that I'm looking for little hats. Okay, onto his pumpkin head. Right, let's see. Plastic glue. Are you going to be clogged? Let's find out. Oh, no, it's working. That's a surprise. Okay, there's the body in there. And let's see if we can just stick it all together at once. It's a risk, because this glue does take a while to completely dry. But I think these pieces are light and spindly enough that hopefully I can get away with it. Right, how does that look? Looking pretty cool, I think. Maybe we can tilt him back a little bit on his legs there. Like so. And that's pretty cool first scarecrow. So what's going to be the best way to leave this guy? Should we lie him down? And let him set that way? Maybe I should jam a little bit of foam under his arm to stop it sinking. There we go. So there's the scarecrow done. And maybe we should just leave it there for tonight. It's been an hour. Still waiting for paints. So let's just finish off what's going on in the chat here. So, Stu says, like with the game Diplomacy, a great game to play with 6 people you don't want to be friends with anymore. Yeah, there's a few games like that. If you never have to see those people again and you just want to be mean, then there are some really good games for that. Mr. Trainer says, what are your favourite Kings of War models to paint and what is your favourite to play as at the moment? Well, Kings of War models to paint. What was actually really enjoyable to paint? Possibly because I really like the models. Maybe the Abyssal Dwarf half-breeds, the cavalry. They were a lot of fun to paint. Maybe because I was just visualising that they were going to look nice when they were finished, because I like the models so much. But I enjoyed painting them. I also enjoyed painting the Overmaster on the Great Winged Half-breed as well. I like painting big stuff. I never used to back in the day. I really like painting dragons now. So I keep being tempted to scour eBay looking for some of the old classic Citadel dragons that I never was brave enough to paint back in the day, and seeing if I could work any of those into my current armies, because I'm not sure I can justify the expense of buying an expensive out of production dragon and then not using it in an army. So that's the kind of thing I like painting at the moment. To play in the game, what are my favourite units at the moment? Well, I'd be tempted to go for the lesser obsidian golems in my Abyssal Dwarf army, just because they never really let you down. Very rarely do they get killed easily, just with their obscene defense and decent nerve. So, unless you put them in a really bad position, so they're going to get multi-charged by multiple hard-hitting enemy units, and don't give them any backup, they usually do well. And are they my favourites to play as, though, or are they just the most effective that I've found so far? I really like using flying individuals, actually, like Basusan. I just find it a lot of fun having the maneuverability of being able to turn around and fly off in any direction you want 20 inches and just threaten huge amounts of the opponent's army at once. So that's a lot of fun. It's one of the reasons I struggle to leave out Susan from my lists, because she is just so much fun to play. So I think that answers your question pretty much there. Romantic models that I also enjoyed painting. I liked painting trolls because I found them quite easy because of the technique I used on them. It was just a light green followed by 5 Agrax Earthshade washes, which turned it into a dark green, but you'd have the occasional bit where it was still fairly bright-ish colour. So I think that looked really good. And anything else leaping to mind right now? Obviously these new grotesques have been quite fun to paint. Deep Red, starting work on a Games Workshop Hydra. Yeah, that is a nice model. If anyone can think of ways I could justify fitting any of the old Citadel dragons into my armies, then feel free to let me know. One thing I could do, if I ever start an Orc army, because I do actually have an Orc army in a box that I won at a tournament, Mantic Orc army, I could get one of the old GW Wyverns, the old Azhag the Slaughterer model. I did own one of those back in the day, so maybe I could have a go at one of those and actually paint it properly this time. Who knows? I could get the Undead Zombie Dragon, the old classic one as well, and use that in my Undead. Although I struggle to get motivated to add things to my Undead army, because I don't like the base scheme on them, because it's just sand with grass on it. And I can't really change that now, unless I started another Undead army, which would effectively be a third one, because I've also got the Undead Halflings, and I don't think I could really justify painting up the old Citadel Vampire, or I can't remember if it was a vampire actually on the zombie dragon, but whoever was on the old zombie dragon, the metal one, I don't think I could justify painting that up to go with an undead halfling army. Stu says Azhag is a neat model. Yes, it is. So that's a possibility. That's something I could look at there. I really like the Wood Elf Forest Dragon, but there's no army I could really justify putting that into, especially for the price it would cost to get that from eBay. And that's all that springs to mind right now. Okay, any other comments or questions before I wrap this one up? Not been a very long one again today, just because I'm still waiting for paints, so there's a limit to what I can do, really. So hopefully, I'll probably tomorrow I might put some more of these scarecrows together. That might be a fun process, and I can do them in kind of an assembly line, so we won't have to have one fully assembled guy just lying there on his side. I can do all the legs to the bodies first, and then the arms and the heads and so on. I can clip out all the parts. That would be thrilling for everyone to watch, I think. And then on Monday, presumably Monday, is going to be when my paints arrive now. And in that case, I'll be able to finish off all my grotesques, because at the moment, they're not quite finished. They look finished, but the inside of the mouths need painting. There's some bits of flesh around the spikes coming out of the shins that need to be painted as well, and on some of them there are eyeballs as well. There's 3 eyes on each one, the ones that have their eyes visible. Everything else is pretty much done, and then it's going to be just tidying them up, fixing any mistakes, and then they'll be ready for varnish. So I would have liked to have been varnishing them today, actually, if my paint had arrived yesterday, but it's probably going to be Monday now. So we can look forward to that. And any last minute questions have come in? Let's see. Stu says, what we're going to bully Andy into doing tomorrow? Well, we've already got a little hat, which is going to be stuck to this guy's head for some games at least, until I get bored of it, and then maybe I'll get a bigger hat, or maybe multiple hats, and then if I get too many hats and I love them all equally, I'll put some of them on him and some of them on his twin. I think that would be quite amusing. You could bully me into accepting vast six-figure donations from you. That would be appreciated. All my various fundraising links are in the description. Steve says, is Rusty going to beat you to the finish? Well, I don't know if Rusty is painting his grotesques at the moment, so he might well finish them before me, if he's been able to get back to them. So I know he had to take a break from them for some reason. So it's possible he'll get there first, which would only be mildly annoying. So here they are. They look just so close to being done, don't they? Just need those tiny few little details finishing off. And then it's just a matter of attaching them to the base. Oh yeah, another thing I did, actually. Where's it gone? Here we go. So last night I primed up the Hellfane base as well, in black. So whenever I prime one of these bases in black, I then have to let it completely dry so it's not shiny at all, because it's matte. And then look over it finally in every possible light to make sure there's no little cork coloured crevices still visible in there, and I can see one tiny little one already. So then apply some more primer over that, and then when I paint the Hellfane, I'll also be working on this while I wait for other colours to dry. So there we go. Sue says 0.000001 pounds. Well, that would still technically be a donation. I'm not sure whether you can actually pledge less than that on any of the fundraising sources that I've provided. I don't know if the amount can be that low. So you may have to round it up a bit. Steve says they look really cool. I'm tempted to buy some. Are you referring to the grotesques? Because if you are, they are very cool indeed. Okay, let's wrap this one up. Don't forget to check out all the links down below, including all my various social media shenanigans and the fundraising sources down there. Obviously, Facebook group and Twitter, most important social media things. And don't forget to like the video if you haven't already. And if you're not a subscriber, then I don't know what you're doing here in the first place, so you should be subscribed anyway. And I think that is everything. I'm going to try and do some kind of PC game stream at some point, possibly tonight, maybe tomorrow. I'll ask Mr. Remington if he wants to play something. And all that remains to be said, I think, is... Who should we get to say this one? We have to wait for it to focus on his face, though, don't we? Otherwise, it doesn't quite have the same effect. Oh, we almost had it there. Come on, you know you want to focus on this guy's face. Oh, we had it. It focuses for a microsecond and then it stops. Well, let's just put it right up there so there's nothing else literally you could be focusing on camera. So how can you even choose not to focus on it now? Oh, we had it there. You know what? He's just going to say it in an unfocused manner. So here he is. Good night out there, whatever you are.